Sup guys, Overlord here, and this video is just gonna be a rant. A rant about the market and its expectations. Because honestly I feel like sometimes I don't understand the goddamn thing. Let's go back a little bit to get some context. In January we had a pretty bad CPI print and Powell testified in Congress, at which point we were sort of expecting 50 basis point increase in the next meeting and potentially going higher for longer in interest rate hikes, potentially all the way up to like 6%. Then the so-called banking crisis happened. Several banks collapsed, Fed had to inject 300 billion of liquidity, and in the media we started to get the view that Fed has to either stop or maybe even pivot right away. And also prior to banking crisis, Fed said that they were not gonna pivot this year, and the market should not expect any rate cuts in 2023. But that was before banking crisis, and some expectations definitely changed. So I took, this was several hours prior to FOMC meeting, I took this screenshot of meeting probabilities. And here we can see that for May and June meeting, the consensus was either 5% or 5.25, so one additional rate hike. Because for March that was pretty much priced in that they were not gonna stop, they're gonna do 25 basis points, because if they were to stop, this would spook the market even more. But then if we were to look further, starting from July and then September, then you can see that in July there was already 28% chance that that Fed will start cutting, and in September already pretty big percentage here that they're gonna cut rates, and some even possibilities that they're gonna cut 50 or 75 basis points depending on where the peak was. And the end of the year, if you look at December, you can see already that the probability of them being on 5% is very, very low. It's 14.4%, and the majority is sitting here in the range of 4 to 4.75%, which was sort of okay when I looked at it. I'm like, okay, the markets, they are basically concerned about the banking crisis. They're not sure whether or not, Fed's gonna keep on that trajectory. And that's a bit weird to me already. Regardless whether or not you believe they were doing a good job in terms of like when to expect and what, they telegraphed their move very well, I would say. Like it's telegraphed in advance how they're gonna approach that. And that's basically they saying something consistently, pretty much the same thing. The last several months, it's been the same message pretty much, and then they do exactly the same as what they said, and somehow markets interpreting that in some weird manner and like always expecting something else. But again, when this crisis hit, I was like, okay, there may be some merit because this is a very serious situation, and maybe Fed will have to change something about their policy. And so yesterday we had a FOMC meeting, and for me personally, I don't see much change in the rhetoric. We had some change in language from like words like can to may in terms of future rate increases, but the economic projections and the dot plot, again, suggesting that they're not gonna pivot this year. The dot plot is sitting firmly at 5% for this year. The economic projections is basically in line with their expectations. And also Powell repeated again that they're not planning to do any rate cuts this year unless something drastically changes. So yesterday I was okay, I will wait 24 hours and I go back to CME FedWatch Tool and check probabilities. So 24 hours have passed, so I come to the watch tool and I cannot believe my eyes. Like I can literally, I'm sitting, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, is this for real? Am I dumb? Am I literally dumb? Because I cannot get it. I don't get it. So what does the market expect? For me, we have the 2-to-1 currently probability roughly of Fed keeping the rates of 5% or increasing the rate to 5.25%. But then starting already on June, the probability of 5.25 is decreased drastically. There's still high probability of them sitting at 5%, but there is already 1/3 probability of a rate cut in 2 meetings. What? Let's go July. We go July, and what do we see? There's 0 probability for 5.25. And again, I understand how it's calculated. I understand it's based on prices of certain futures and their difference. But this is the best model we get on the market. And this is considered to be the smartest money on the market. So I'm taking that at the face value. 14%. So only 14% that we're gonna still have the rate of 5%. And 86% that Fed will cut. 86%. And look at that, 45% of that they will cut by 25 basis points, and another roughly 40% that they will cut 50 basis points, even 75 basis points. And that's July. That's July. We go September, we slide even more. At September, there's pretty much no probability by this model that Fed will not cut rates. And if you look at that, the range goes from 425 to 475. So even more cuts expected. And for the fun of it, let's look at the end of the year. And I remind you that the dot plot is sitting firmly at 5%. So December, no probabilities for 5%, pretty much 0. Pretty much 0 for 475. And consensus is around 4% to 4.25. And even we have pretty decent probability for 375. I don't want to go further because it's like so far along the way that, I mean, it doesn't matter for me. I only care about this year because, again, Fed is so data driven now that like looking far ahead down the road, I think it's makes no sense. So I cannot understand why Fed is saying one thing and doing its thing, and the market is like, ah, la 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 la, can't hear you. Or it's not that they don't hear, they just don't want to hear. Maybe is that they think that they know better. Fed is saying no cuts most likely, and the market is like, they're gonna cut. They have to cut. This, this crisis and this and other problems, and like they have to cut. And judging by this model, they expect by the end of the year, on average, 100 basis points of cuts. I can't wrap my head around it. And even for July, for example, let's just take July, where the markets expect that cuts will happen. Don't you think that before actually cutting, the Fed would sort of change its stance on the no cuts policy? So to announce that they're changing the stance. Don't you think that they will do that? And it will be a lag of at least like two meetings, or maybe at least like one meeting What they're gonna say, for example, in June, they'd be like, okay guys, we actually think maybe the data on inflation comes in so great. Inflation suddenly at 3%, they're like, okay, we can start cutting. But I don't think they will do like surprise cuts. So yeah, I'm just gonna wrap this up and drop in my own 2 cents here. I think people should really listen more to what Powell is saying, because their moves has been well telegraphed. And again, maybe I was wrong. These are the smartest money on the market, and who am I? But yeah, it will be fun to come back to this video in the future. I'm out.